All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to this conference and to this presentation that's about to happen right now. My name is Chris Kuzmi, and I've recently been elected to the board. I'm really proud to be part of the organization. But you're the guy. And we're really proud of the work we're doing. Like everybody said, if you see any of us walking around, you have any recommendations or things you want from the board, please talk to us. And like everybody said, we are your representatives and we work for you. So please, let's keep an open line of conversation. Today, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing dear friend and somebody who we're so proud of in New York City. She's our executive director for the New York City Brewers Guild. We're really lucky to have her. Is Reilly.
Hi.
And she's going to speak about advocacy, activism, awareness, and how it affects everything. Before we do, sponsoring this room is the New York State Farm Bureau, and I'd like to introduce Mark James to say a little bit.
Well, thank you all for being here. Farm Bureau is really proud to sponsor this conference again. We've been strong supporters of the New York State Brewers Association for many years. I've certainly had a relationship with people like Dave Kadaleski for almost 20 years with this organization, and it's really a pleasure. I'm proud to say that I've been on the New York State Brewers app. I've been to 267 breweries in the state, so I'm proud to support all of you. If you don't know who we are, we're a grassroots advocacy organization. We support farmers, we support people in the craft beverage industry. We're organized at the county, state, and national level. So we get involved in county issues. So if you've got a zoning issue, you're having problems and pushback from a town, we can get involved in things like that. About a year ago, I was involved with a brewery out in Ontario County. The city all of a sudden said, no, you can't have any outdoor music anymore. And so we sent a letter to the city council saying it was a really dumb idea, and they actually reversed their decision on that. At the state level, we've done a lot of different things. And currently, one of our priority issues is to extend to breweries, cideries, and distilleries the same privileges that wineries do, and that's to be able to sell your product at local farm markets. You can sell them at farmers markets now, but not actually at a farm stand. And so we're trying to get legislation passed to allow you to do that at a local farm stand within 20 miles of your business. And then at the national level, I know there's a lot of angst out there right now with what's going on in the federal government, and we're certainly involved in that. We've come out in strong opposition to the tariffs that the Trump administration has put in place. In fact, in our statement, we cited the impact on craft breweries as one of the reasons that we need to roll back some of these tariffs, and also funding for USDA. But I would like to invite all of you to stop by our booth right outside here. We're kind of excited about this. For the very first time, New York Farm Bureau is debuting our own beer. And 100% of the ingredients were donated for this. We have 8 breweries participating in this collaboration beer. Waterloo Container donated the cans and the labels. Glenn Clark designed the label on this Agriness beer. It's a cream ale, 100% New York ingredients. The hops and cobblestone hops and murmuration malts. Judd in the back donated all the malt for that. So thank you, Judd. And the neat thing is, because everything was donated for this beer, 100% of the proceeds are going to go to the Food Bank of Central New York and to Food Link out of Rochester. So come by, try a sample of this. We can talk more about Farm Bureau and what we do, and answer any of your questions. So Chris, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to the presentation.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, as Chris let you know, I'm Reilly. I'm the executive director for New York City Brewers Guild. I guess the best way to describe that is I'm the Paul for New York City, is what I often say to people. I wanted to make this more of a casual, conversational kind of session. One want to just start out with, this is a safe space, and please feel free to voice concerns that you have while we're in this space. It stays here. This is, we're trying to make this informative and helpful. And brought along with me partners. The Guild has been partnering with Outsmart since about 2018, and we have Scarlett Thompson and Eric McGriff have joined us for this session as well. I think you're all upstairs. We were just talking before this for the panel, and I noticed that this is the time. This timed really well after the panel that we all sat through and listened to a lot of things being discussed, without a lot of specificity, which is one of the things we want to try and discuss today. But we're also talking, we'd like to get a read on the room. We know that people attend Craft Brewers Conference that are front of house, back of house, ownership, management, employee. So just want to try and get a idea as to where you're coming from. And yeah, so if you want to.
Oh yeah, happy to facilitate that. So let's see, who is anybody here from New York City, first of all? Anybody? Hey. Okay, fun. Eric and I obviously work in the city, so fun to see you guys here. But I'm also, no offense, glad that there are not that many New York City people here, because, we're in the city all the time. So who here, I guess, I don't even know what positions we've got. Who here, interfaces with customers, in a brewery, kind of with patrons and stuff like that? Just show of hands. Okay, cool. Who here is also just a brewer? A lot of brewers. Okay, almost everyone. How about solely back of house, admin? Okay, I see you. Thank you for your service. Management, how many people are managers? Okay, hello, we'd love to see you. What about owners? Okay, got a few here. Okay, so we've got, what else, anything else? Any positions that I didn't say that you have? And shout them out. No? Ally members, yeah. Cool, okay, cool. So, we asked this because and we'll talk more about Outsmart and who we are and what we do in a little bit, but we just kind of like to get a sense of who's in the room so that we're saying things that are actually relevant to you and, your day-to-day work. So it looks like we've got a lot of people who maybe make decisions and are in charge of the spaces that they're representing, so we love to see that. Eric and I work a lot with primarily front of house staff and people who are on the floor and serving guests, so it's always nice to get the chance to talk to some owners and managers as well.
I just want to shout out Upstate. I'm Central New York born and raised. Okay, I've been downstate for about 7 years, but yeah, I'm Eric McGriff from Syracuse, New York, so it's good to be upstate, yo.
All right, Dan, back to you.
Yes, I'll just kind of dive in. This is my 4th year attending New York State's Craft Brewers Conference. I've also attended the National Brewers Association, CBC, as an attendee, and being in a position where frequently I'm on the receiving end of feedback from attendees of these conferences. Well, each year there have been a lot of instructional panels and sessions. I've noticed a potential need for something a bit more informationally interactive, to offer both information and guidance without judgment, and rather with the intention to facilitate. I will also readily admit, to those of you who don't know me, a literal lifetime of social justice being an important factor for me and how I move in the world, both professionally, personally, and beyond that. One of the reasons that I titled this session Advocacy, Activism, and Awareness and How It Affects Everything, or I did title it in the hopes of offering some direction for those looking to make changes, growth, have more engagement in these areas. A colleague of mine who works for Time Out magazine is now teaching at one of our colleges in New York City, and she recently published the quote, "Journalism is something you have to do, or you just have to do. You could sit in a classroom and learn about it for a semester, but that's not how I learned and that's not how I teach." And I feel the same way about engagement. So, wanted to share some of what I've found can work to offer tools that you may need to implement a better environment for your team, your patrons, your community. As we were discussing the panel upstairs, there was a lot of discussion about diversity and bringing different people into your space and how do you do that, and making that a part of hospitality, but there wasn't really specifics discussed. And I know what comes up frequently, we get it, we're from New York City, the most diverse city in America, and that's one of the reasons that I live there. I love that. But recognizing that DEIJ, whatever title you want to put on it, it doesn't just apply to what someone looks like. We were discussing casually before the session started. I learned this a couple of years ago. I didn't know 25% of the population of humans identifies as having some form of disability. That also is a way of being inclusive. When I was working for a brewery in the city prior to this role, as what happens with everyone, when you start a brewery, start a business, you have a business plan. And what we found for a lot of our breweries in the city, I'm imagining elsewhere as well, your neighborhood and your patrons are going to tell you who they want you to be. And that's something that, I've seen when you lean in that really is beneficial all the way around and focuses back on the conversation upstairs. So in 2018, the Guild started partnering with the team at Outsmart, first to offer New York State mandated sexual harassment training, as they offer nightlife specific training that better aligns with our industry. I'm sure we've all, as it's part of New York State's requirements, seen the videos where it's, Joe and Jane in an office, and that's not what we experience in this industry. So having partners like Outsmart, and I'm not even sure how we came to you. You came to us back in 2018, but that formed a longer relationship. And that's one of the things that in my role I've worked to do is see where the quote holes are and how to fill them. And they can be done with no expense too. Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry. So
Got you.
thank you. Yeah. Yeah, so my first note is authenticity is primary. Why is what you're trying to do important? What are you looking to accomplish? How do you plan to implement it? But you need to be authentic. It can't just be, social justice is important, so I need to do it. You need to want to do it. You need to know your reasoning behind it, is, I think, where I'm coming from with that. Having goals, knowing what kind of an outcome you're looking for, having, maintaining your steps towards those goals and continuing growth. I'm jumping around a little bit and I apologize for that. But for instance, we started working with Outsmart, it was for training. And then in the city, we put on 2 festivals. The New York State Brewers Association puts on, I think it's 4 or 5. And we recognized in 2019, there was an incident that occurred at one of our events. And we immediately came together at, I don't even think I was on the board then. Came together as a community and thought, okay, how are we going to address this? And what are we going to do to prevent this moving forward? And that's when we created our Safety Advocate program, which at festivals, you have security, but people don't always want to go to the authority or the police. So offering another option, and safety advocates at our events are looking for different things that security might not be. And that also informed who we hire as security. We hire security teams that have nightlife training, have upstander, bystander training, and Eric and Scarlett will share more of that. That's what you guys specialize in. And just offering things like that to ensure safety of not just your attendees, but the people pouring at the fest. So if someone comes up to someone pouring behind Jockey Box and makes comments that are inappropriate, that can be addressed in the moment. You shouldn't be harassed at work in any form. But also looking out for the attendees. Does someone appear to be overserved and maybe they're alone? Keeping an eye on them to make sure that they're okay, and if they need to leave, that they can get home safely. Small things like that. Led to bigger, initiatives, so to speak. So sorry again, I'm jumping around, but as I'm saying, there were a number of successive factors that led to our guild creating protocols and then seeking out ways to address them, and that was just one of the ones. And each of these events, led to not just seeking out solutions, but reaching out to aligning entities, city organizations, and community groups. So I can just tab over to my,
Yes.
yeah, this is just basic breakdowns of, advocacy, activism, awareness. Initially, I thought I'd just make this kind of a casual conversation, but I get it, having visual tools also helps. Sorry. And just our safety advocate program led us to additional steps. Like we now have and have had for a while a third-party reporting system and platform. So if an incident occurs, there's a way that it can be reported, be it anonymously or not. And even if it's not in the moment, if someone recognizes something occurred that they feel needs to be addressed, it doesn't have to be in the moment, it can be after the fact. Like we work with WeVow as our third-party reporting system. We previously worked with Speakfully. There's a lot of other ones out there that will work with you. They're not all something that costs your business anything. You can often do some of these things either very low cost or free. Another initiative that the Guild put together was the I Don't Drink Beer with Racists campaign. And that was a fundraiser to raise money for the ACLU Legal Defense Fund. So a designer had created a design that, we still sell some of this merch, and it's still, the proceeds go to the ACLU Legal Defense Fund. That came during the Black Lives Matter movement. We thought, okay, this is something we want to address and make it known that this is something that's important to us in our community. And then from that, we do a Pride Mini Fest in the city, and that's grown to a week and a month of events around that. Additionally, when Roe v. Wade was overturned, several members of our community came together for the Have a Beer in New York City program, which there was also a beer created with that, where there's all kinds of ways to raise awareness and funds and like show, I guess, put your walk behind your talk, I guess is what I would say to that. But yeah, so as we were saying, I do want to make this not me just talking at you and saying, this is what you need to do, this is what you have to do, this is what you should do. It's more about how can we make things better for everyone? And again, it doesn't need to come at a cost. So I guess I would.
The examples?
Yeah. So thank you. Yeah, feel free to screenshot this, for lack of a better way to describe it, because you're not on the screen. But I just put together some examples and suggested groups of agencies, like local to New York City. We have the Mayor's Office of Nightlife. There's also Small Business, the Office of Equity, the Office of Gender Equity. I don't need to read through these. Feel free to take a picture. There's New York State agencies too. Like I looked up all of these, and they all offer services, programming, and at no cost to you as someone doing business in New York State. And it's just being able to form those relationships. And national, like our national BA, Bart was upstairs, and we're promoting being a member of your associations. The Brewers Association has a resource hub that, as any member, can access things on there, and there's all kinds of fantastic tools and information on there. Often people don't know where to start with what's my first step. I want to address a specific topic. There's endless ways to research it online, but that can also feel like going down a rabbit hole. So having some direction. So I guess to that, if there are particular things that are something your team or your audience wants to address, there's ways to find those tools. And I don't want to be vague, as we were talking earlier, like naming what's missing, naming what you feel you need to improve on. That's paramount. Yeah, I don't know if you want to jump in.
Share some of our slides.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks.
I think Anne's really got it. Like figuring out what it is that you need, but not just from a business standpoint, asking your staff. Does anyone here know the difference between inclusion and belonging? Inclusion is about action. Belonging is the feeling you get when you are included. And the thing about inclusion is you can't know what it is. You can't decide that you're inclusive. You have to ask others. Is the way that I operate, is the way that I lead, is this behavior inclusive? So on a very real, small, practical level, ask your staff, right? Look at your business plans and ask your staff, what do you need to feel more seen, heard, and included? Because when you do those things, they'll speak up more, which reduces liability. They'll share more ideas, they'll be more creative, they'll feel more empowered to step up and intervene and create a safer space when you're not there. But it does require a certain level of modeling. And a lot of folks will go right to the money, the policies, protocols, and everything. It starts with small behaviors. Mm-hmm. We know authenticity is a part of Anne because she proactively talks about social justice, because she puts it in the festivals, because she encourages and promotes it on her social media, right? It's in her everyday interactions. And that's where you all can start. Small moments, having a conversation, Googling some resources, sharing them. We even have a QR code of all the New York City resources that we give to places we train, right? So those are some of the places we can start. But Scarlett, you got it.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to tell you what Outsmart does, too, so you have a sense of, like, who the hell Eric and I are. So down here you see these are our partner organizations. So Outsmart NYC is technically not a real, it's an entity, but it's not, it's a program, it's a collective, it's a curriculum, but it's made up of a lot of different organizations. So do you want to talk about CVTC really quickly?
Yeah, I work for the Crime Victims Treatment Center. We were founded in 1977, New York City's first hospital-based rape crisis program, and we provide free legal, crisis intervention, and therapeutic services to any victim of any violent crime they've experienced at any point in their life. I run the prevention program, so my job's about being in the community and helping individuals create safer, more inclusive spaces where they are, being compliant, but really going above and beyond that so you can get that retention that you want, increase involvement, increase revenue, all that.
And I'm at the New York City Alliance Against Sexual Assault. We are a little different than Eric's org because we don't do response. So, Eric's org has therapists and lawyers and stuff like that on staff, but our team is small and we just do sexual violence prevention. So my job is partly running Outsmart with Eric, but then we also do consent education for teens. We do training for the nurses and doctors in hospitals who do forensic exams. We do a lot of stuff at the Alliance. And then we also have that resource guide for survivors in New York City to just kind of have one spot where all the resources are. So I'm at the Alliance, Eric is at CVTC. Together we collaborate on Outsmart, and then we always put NU because Outsmart is a collective. It's nightlife and it's response agencies. So our mission is to prevent and end sexual violence in New York City nightlife and hospitality spaces. So that's what Outsmart does at our core. We've been around since...
Like 10, 15 years.
Yeah, 10 or 15 years. I know the answer to that, but I don't know why I'm always I never remember. But we are, like I said, we're a collective of nightlife industry professionals. So Eric and I are the preventionists within this, but we actually have a few staff members who aren't here today who are nightlife staff. So we have Andrea they do harm reduction in nightlife spaces. They're also just a nightlife enthusiast. Every time we go to a space, they're like, yeah, I was here on Saturday night. I was here with my friends on Friday and Saturday and Sunday. So they are just in the nightlife world. And then KK, DJ KK47, she's a DJ, she's amazing. And then DJ Nina Vicious is our admin associate. Her name is Jasmine. But our team is 5 people and we're half nightlife and we're half preventionists. And then we have support service providers. So the folks Eric works with, the folks that I'm connected to, part of this is we know that in the nightlife industry, kind of like Anne was saying about the sexual harassment video, the resources and the tools that nightlife people are given for preventing sexual violence are not nightlife specific, and they're not catered towards the very specific kind of community that you all are in, and is often not that helpful. And there isn't a lot of access to support services for people who work in nightlife or people who have non-traditional, not 9-to-5 jobs. And because of this partnership, our services are nightlife industry specific, proactive, and trauma informed. Anything else about Outsmart you want to say, E, before we do?
And free.
And free. And free. Because we're nonprofits. Although if you want to give us money, We would not be mad. Want to do a sponsorship, partnership, whatever you guys want. Okay, so why nightlife? We just wanted to say a little bit. It's funny to put this slide up. We presented at the National Sexual Assault Conference a few years ago, and it's funny because in those spaces, you know, people are asking like, why are you working with nightlife people? And in these spaces, it's funny being with nightlife and being like, why are you talking about sexual violence prevention? But we're always bridging these gaps. We know that nightlife is where culture and community are built. Nightlife spaces are where people get ideas about the people in their community. They get to know them, they make judgments, they bring in their own biases, they unlearn their biases. That is what happens in your breweries, in your nightlife spaces. And by integrating norms of consent and anti-oppression into those spaces, we are making widespread culture change. It is astonishing, honestly, how little the sexual violence and like anti-oppression industry focuses on nightlife, because nightlife it's that third space. It's where people are going to get to know each other and like, you know, we know when people are lit, like their true colors sometimes come out and harm can happen or really good things can happen. It's also where like queer people forever have found community, and communities of color. Like nightlife really is about culture. And then we also know people bring everything to nightlife spaces. Like, I don't know how many, I know some of you said you're like interfacing with customers and maybe you're like pouring and serving. People tell you stuff. When you are standing behind the bar, like the things that, I worked in the nightlife industry for a long time, and the things people have told me when I was like 19, just like handing somebody a beer and I'm getting like the extensive trauma that they experienced in the past week. You are expected to act as therapist and as like community builder and as a friend to the people who are coming into your spaces. And a lot of nightlife staff are not equipped to deal with that. And also sometimes it's not your job to be fixing problems for other people, but like you are tasked with it. And so that's also a reality that we're dealing with.
Has anyone here ever heard that alcohol causes violence? Maybe? I think one of the cool things about Outsmart is, as violence prevention specialists, we know that's not true. And we love looking at like NYPD, law enforcement's face when we tell them, hey, if alcohol causes violence, that means every time every one of us has a beer, we have no choice but to punch someone in the face. But if we think about our average night, it's mostly a relative few who really do a lot of the escalated stuff. So I think a great thing about doing nightlife advocacy, it's a great opportunity for us to say, hey, we know there's a high correlation between certain forms of harm in the community, that's true, and these establishments and the alcohol are not the cause. The cause has to do with that individual. The cause has to do with like environmental factors, and that's why it's so important to really engage the nightlife and community space. It's a space where we go for community. It's a space that has been a safe haven for sex workers, queer folks, BIPOC folks, undocumented folks for decades. And it really is that place where we can build community, but it does have certain things that we need to look out for, but that's like every industry. But I just really love to say, we know alcohol does not cause violence, because most of us here who had this beer this morning are not acting violently.
I hope. I hope there's nothing going down right now.
Even then, it's like they chose not to do, so it's about that person and what they believe, and how are we creating environments that say, hey, that show people with small everyday actions, we're not gonna let you say that racist, sexist, homophobic comment. Mm-hmm. We're going to provide you resources up here. We're going to have our code of conduct here, which bartenders have told us makes them feel empowered to say, hey, no, you can't do that. Look at this code, right? Just something simple like that. So again, pulling at those everyday examples, why nightlife? Why not?
Mm-hmm. We also hear a lot of like, when I tell people I do nightlife sexual violence prevention, it's a lot of like, oh, so like roofing, or, we have a lot of places who want us to have branded drink covers, which I love the element of safety for people if that makes people feel more comfortable. But what we know is like when you send a message that it's the responsibility of the person who might be harmed to cover their drink or to put on, there's like nail polish you can put on that turns a different color if your drink has like a drug in it. Like that type of stuff is, sure, it has its value, but like that's really not where we're leaning, because where we lean is if someone comes into the space with the intention of drugging somebody else or the intention of roofing someone, that's the person we want to be focusing on, not the people who are going to be harmed. And like Eric was saying, if somebody walks into a space with the intention of causing harm and they see a sign that says, like, consent is mandatory, here's what consent is. If they see a sign that says, like, we don't tolerate transphobia in this space, we don't tolerate racism, and then they see the staff and they see the community members intervening when someone makes a racist joke, when somebody makes a joke about trans people. When they see that intervention, they know this is the type of space where I actually can't cause the harm that I came here to cause. The places where people are getting harmed are places where you walk in and the culture is one of, we're not looking out for each other, we're not looking out for those people who are causing harm. So I hope that makes sense as kind of like a reframing, because that's within this field, it's a victim blaming field. It's a field where we put the responsibility on people who are more vulnerable to not be hurt. But instead, we want to be shifting the culture to people walking into a space and feeling like they know that if they try to do something a little bit fucked up here, like, someone's going to call them on it and someone's going to stop them. And in turn, when I personally walk into spaces that feel friendly, where I know the bartenders have my back, where I know if I say that someone's giving me a hard time, like, the bartender's going to listen to me, I'm going to go back there. Like, I have bars that I go to consistently because I trust the staff and I trust that they're building a culture where consent is at the forefront. So at the end of the day, I know it's about money too. Like, you all run businesses and you need to keep them going. And what we have found time and time again is that the spaces we work with that implement these things, they see massive returns on people coming back, because word spreads. And then the places that are getting canceled, or the places where harm is happening, people don't show up, and we just know that that's the reality. So even if you want to look at this from the lens of purely profit and money, like, it's still core to the work that we should be doing. Do you want to add anything, Anne, or should I go to our next?
Next slide.
Okay, cool. I think, yeah, okay, so Eric, just in time. Should we do the F game? Yeah, okay. So basically, also I didn't explain this, but Eric and I go. And what?
Slides of these.
Let's do those. It's more fun, right? Okay, Eric's gonna give you all a piece of paper. Don't show anybody the piece of paper that you have. Eric and I do trainings for nightlife staff. I think we kind of said this, but this is something that we do with staff members. So you're gonna take your piece of paper and you are going to read the statement on it in your head to yourself. And you are going to count the number of F's in that statement. So just the letter F. Count how many F's there are in the statement total. And some of you are getting more time. You're the lucky ones at the front. Yeah, question?
Does it work like
Every single F in the entire sentence. And just keep it to yourself. So don't say to anybody. Eric, I can help you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, girl, come on.
So. There you go. Yep. There you go. Do you want some? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, count your F's. Don't say it.
Keep your fingers curled.
Okay, you have like 30 more seconds. The people in the back. All right, you want to do this?
Yeah. Can I get a raise of hands for one person to tell me how many F's are in your statement?
6.
You got 6. How many of us had 6 in our statement? Did anyone have anything different?
Yeah.
What?
7.
7s? Anything different?
7.
7? Anything different?
And 8.
8. 9. Anyone get anything different than 6, 7, 8, or 9? All right, so you want to put it up? We all put the same sentence, y'all.
What?
So let's count. Fairness is the final result of years of effective effort combining the experience of diversity. What did we miss? We all miss the ups. What is it about the ups that makes them easy to miss? The small, connected word, easy to skip over. Right? It's not the beginning of the word. Yeah. In the violence prevention world, when we talk about culture shift, intervening, creating a safer culture, it can be really, really scary because it's big. So at Outsmart, we start by asking you to look for the above moments in everyday life. Those small moments that aren't the physical violence or the super, like explicit sexual racist comment that we know to like put on our cape and jump in the middle of. That moment where you might check someone, hey, not around here. The consent check at the door. Seeing people who are uncomfortable to get, when you think someone's uncomfortable, be like, oops, excuse me, gotta get through here, so you create a separation. Checking in on someone and saying, hey, how are you doing? What brings you here tonight? So that you can listen to see if one person is a lot more lit than the other, and if you need to pay attention to this situation to find out maybe they're siblings or maybe they're on their first Tinder date. There are a lot of these up moments that you can use every day. Anna's been naming some, I've been naming them, Scarlett's been naming them. But we'd like to start this culture change conversation by looking for those small moments where you can do something different, especially if people can see it. Writing it in a policy, cool. But change management 101, culture eats strategy for breakfast. The people need to see it demonstrated. They need to hear you ask about it, because if we can't talk about it together, then it's probably not a part of your culture. Mm-hmm. It's a big sign. If you have no language for it, people are uncomfortable talking about it, it's not meaningful to get better. So you can start to do that.
We also see a lot of, Eric and I, we go and do trainings primarily for front of house. Like I said, we don't always talk to the managers or owners. They'll bring us in and then sit in on the presentation, but we're often working with a lot of the bartenders, bar backs, stuff like that. And what we hear a lot is, I am in the weeds every Friday night. I cannot be saving everybody at this bar or paying attention to what's going on in this massive brewery or this massive space. And that's really where those of moments come in, because we're not asking nightlife staff to put on their capes and be heroes and go and intervene in physical violence and put their bodies in between people. What we're asking for is just for people to intervene in those of moments, in those moments that it's really easy culturally to just write it off as part of the culture or part of the vibes of nightlife, we work with a lot of servers who say, well,
That's how it is.
yeah, that's how it is. My tips are dependent on me not saying anything to the customer because this is my livelihood, and if I say something to them, they might not tip me. But those aren't the customers that you want at your space. If they're going to be causing harm, you don't want them there. And instead you want to be bringing in more customers with better intentions. And we also hear a lot of staff who don't get backed up then when they, say this person's causing harm or this person's harassing someone. There's, the sentiment of the customer's always right, but the customer is not always right. We know that people can be bad people and they can be causing harm, and that has to be that first line of tolerance, is we actually don't accept that. One final slide that we'll show, and then we do want to open it up to questions and just general thoughts. But my next slide is a little bit heavy, so I do just want to give a content warning. But like Anne was mentioning, we were listening to the panel this morning, and I was like, okay, so there's a lot of talk diversity and inclusion, but no one's naming racism or transphobia or homophobia, the actual harms that maybe we're talking about when we say diversity. So I want to just take a second to talk through what we mean when we talk about sexual violence. And again, this for some people might be new information. For some of you, this might be girl, I've known that since I was 2 years old. That's totally fine too. But we are going to talk specifically about those forms of harm. So if you need to leave, also please take bathroom break. So we're all born, put your eyes on these outer layers here. I forgot to animate this. We're all born into racialized gender stereotypes and rigid gender roles assigned at birth. So if we're just looking at that outermost layer, I come out the womb, I have a whatever genitalia, and people say it's a boy, it's a girl. That is where it begins. When we are born and we are forced into the gender binary. A lot of people are born with genitalia or with hormones or gonads, whatever, that maybe don't fit directly into what we think of as a man or a woman. Those are intersex people. There are a lot of intersex people in this world who, from the moment that they're born, are forced into one gender. A lot of children get surgeries that they have not consented to, a lot of intersex children, because we are so obsessed with fitting people into one gender or another. So we grow up because of the gender we were assigned at birth. I don't just move through the world as a cisgender, which means that I identify as the gender that I was assigned at birth. I don't just move through the world as a cis woman. I move through the world as a cis white woman. That's really different than moving through the world as a woman of color or as a trans person of color. Gender can't be separated from race. They are deeply interconnected, so that's why racialized gender stereotypes are also part of this, what we're born into. Now, this first layer of harm that we see is the layer that happens the absolute most, and it's intervened in the absolute least. So problematic language, kind of messed up jokes, and objectification. Think about your average night out, average, community gathering where you have maybe more than 50 people in a space. It's pretty likely that somebody's going to make a joke that is harmful to some identity. This is the layer when we talk about those of moments where we want to be intervening, because intervening at this layer is so much less scary than intervening when we get to those innermost layers. We know that this then leads to slurs, street harassment, and threats. So story I always tell to demonstrate how this happens. If somebody's sitting at the bar and they make a joke about how trans women aren't women, everybody laughs, nobody says anything, including the bartender, whoever's there. That doesn't mean that the person who made that joke is gonna then go out on the street and harass a trans woman. But the person who made that joke probably holds some internalized belief, but everybody laughing at it and nobody saying, like, hey, that's actually not an okay thing to say. By nobody intervening in that, everyone in that circle now is getting sent the message that it's okay. So someone in that circle might then go and tell that joke to a family member who's more prone towards violence, or a random person they meet. That person might then go out and escalate the harm. So it's not to say that the people who, make jokes that they don't think very much about are out and escalating the harm, but by allowing those jokes to happen, it sets a culture where it's okay to dehumanize somebody. So this layer of slurs, street harassment, and threats, we know, Eric and I know deeply because we work in this field, it leads to sexual, psychological, and physical abuse. And I know it's heavy, but it ends in people being killed. We're talking about Black people being killed by police violence, trans people of color being killed. Sam Nordquist was a Black trans man in New York State who was killed very recently. And before he was killed, he experienced months of sexual violence. We know that these things are interconnected, and we know people are dying every single day, missing and murdered Indigenous women and Two-Spirit people being killed by their intimate partners. We know it's happening. And again, we're not asking people to intervene when they see physical violence. We're asking people to just intervene in these outermost layers. Sharing your pronouns when you meet somebody, asking somebody for their pronouns, showing that in this space we recognize that we can't know somebody's pronouns just by looking at them. Those messages are what create a culture of safety for people. I know this is a heavy slide, but I'm gonna move on to a little bit lighter. E, do you want to talk about our safety monitor program a little bit? I have our things up here.
Oh yeah, and Anne, please jump in,
Yeah.
because it sort of started with Anne. I was just looking through a picture on my doing like a Space Jesus festival on Coney Island, but basically, I know, right? Anne came to us with Flint.
Yes, with Flint Whistler, who's also a heavily involved member of our New York City brewing community and guild. As I mentioned earlier on, we had started a safety advocate program and had invited team at Outsmart to help us with that. First year was just volunteers who had all been through your training and or additional training, and then making you guys more of a official part of it. So we don't hold any festivals without, and actually even our guild meetings, there is a safety advocate assigned. To, you know, as you were talking, to keep an eye on things, that there's another set of eyes, just being aware of what's going on. But asking that those people have the training behind knowing how to intervene. You know, as we were just talking in the last slide. Things start small and then escalate quickly sometimes, and you want to prevent the escalation. And it goes back to, you know, my original idea behind having this. You know, advocacy, activism, awareness, it all dials into this. And these are just some of the reasons why it really is important, and how it genuinely, I know I'm going back to my title, but how it really affects everything. Man, that was why I wanted Scarlett and Eric to be such a part of this, because this is what they do. They offer training, they do presentations. It's not what I do. Like, I support our New York City Guild, but part of that has led to forming partnerships like this, not just with you guys, but for instance, you know, New York City Hospitality Alliance during COVID, they became a fantastic partner for us. I don't want to get off of, you know, I was talking about heavy important topics, because that's one of the reasons we're all here, a main reason we're all here. But yeah, I can also put up, you know, my additional slides that have lists, you know, I had up earlier for suggested agencies and groups, and then one of the ways to also better inform yourself and, you know, or people around you. I also put together a list of, you know, just a handful of like content creators and accounts to follow. There's, you know, there are festivals and events that have focused audiences that if you want to look to those for, well, what are they doing that we're not doing? Like, for instance, Barrel and Flow and Crafted for Action are phenomenal groups, events and festivals that have targeted audiences and reach a much broader dynamic of people in the world than your average event does.
You all need to get you an Ann. She said she's not in the work, but she is. And she's really been like she's been like the biggest connector for us. Ann is the plug, y'all. And the great thing about having someone like Ann is that culture change happens when you build collective power. A lot of people really get into it like, oh, it has to come from the top down, oh, we have to write these policies. Culture change most effectively happens when you get people who are open to it to work together to do more than what they can on their own. It's great when you have someone with structural power or leadership. It's great when you have someone who has social influence, but you need both. Because top down can really put you into that culture versus strategy thing, and they should be aligned, not different, aligned. And Ann does a really good job, even with just like these acts. You can start building collective power by following and DMing these people. Even if they're not in your county, COVID taught us how to do things virtually. They can train your staff over Zoom, you know?
And so can we. Or we can come upstate and train your staff, although might need some money to get us here, but we'll do our very best. Yeah, we'll say it with Eric's mom. I think those were all of our slides, but we have about 10 minutes left, so would love to hear if people have questions or thoughts, or they're like, I don't agree with anything you said, let's talk about it.
You know, like, I'm sure everybody came to this room with an expectation of what this session was going to be, and having been, you know, on the other side of this table way more times than I've been on this side, you know, we want to help address that. Don't want you to leave this room thinking, well, I expected this and I didn't get that out of it. So here for that as well. Again, it was great.
How you doing? Justin English, Frog Alley Brewing. I came in to hear a little more specifics about how you work with advocacy groups. Specifically, we're throwing an event with the Autism Society. I was looking for tips on that. I found it incredibly helpful. Learned things I didn't think I was going to learn, but maybe going forward, you could have a section where you do talk about all types of advocacy for different groups of disabilities, because that was what I was targeting.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, thank you. And you know, that goes back to what we were mentioning earlier, that 25% of the population of humans identify as having some form of disability. And a lot of those are not visual. You don't know when you see someone that they're dealing with something that some people would other them for. And like, for instance, autism, there's Brew for Autism in the city that many of our breweries are heavily involved with. The homebrew, one of the homebrew groups has been running it for a long time. Yes, yeah, Poor Standards, they're out of Staten Island, and yeah, they hold a minimum of one event a year. Claire Allen, who you've seen, who's helping out New York State, she's also involved in a number of advocacy groups like that as well. We've been approached for a number of different, as we all know, working in this community, there's always a fundraising beer that someone is producing, and all of us would love to be able to participate and support all of them. Often there's many reasons behind why a brewery can't, and more often than not, it's time, schedule, and finances. It has nothing to do with them not wanting to be involved. Like in November, there's a lot of different men's-based groups that will approach breweries, for prostate cancer awareness. November, lots of different entities like that. And I'm sorry if I'm not answering your question.
I mean, you could also, like, a lot of low-lift stuff, like have them table, maybe, if you have a section, set it up and they can put their resources out. Again, look on Instagram for stuff. One thing I love to do is I call it environmental scan. I literally can just pull up a Google map, type in the word autism, type in the word alcohol, and all the spots will appear right on that Google map. But even if you don't have any, that's where it's like Google, following these pages, have them do a session for your staff. There are often people like Scarlett and I who work for nonprofits that will give you free education and training. It might not be nightlife specific, but we are more than willing to brainstorm with you. And then to plug Scarlett's org again. We actually have these cards that just have a QR code. If you Google search, put a bunch of resources on a Google Doc, you can turn it in a QR code, put it up in your venue. Mm-hmm. If that's something you care about, and of course you can do fundraisers, awareness events and stuff. But it can start low lift. There are resources in all of New York State, especially now that we have virtual capabilities to do online training.
Also, there's an org called Culture City, Culture with a K. They're amazing. They actually do specific work around sensory inclusion in nightlife spaces. So like breweries, restaurants, etc. And you can get certified as like a sensory inclusive space for people with autism or PTSD or specific sensory needs. And they give you a sensory kit that has like noise canceling headphones, fidget toys, and then like glasses for like strobe lights and stuff like that. We're meeting with them next week actually to just like learn more about their work. But Culture City is a great resource for like any space that wants to be more sensory inclusive.
Even if you have like a relaxation space too, where someone can step away from the noise, if it's a corner or something like that, with those fidgets. Even we have coloring books in my office that a lot of folks on the spectrum love to use, so things like that can just make it a bit more inclusive, and you can get an Amazon pack for like $20.
You had a question?
More just a comment, because I think all of us as brewery owners and get a lot of requests for people wanting donation years and stuff. One of the things that we kind of do for them or talk to them is like, hey, why don't you come to our space, be part of it, and we can have like a little bit of like an hour where like every pint dollar goes to your thing. So they come, they set up tables and they present stuff. So it's not just us giving something to an organization, but you're trying to move them into your organization as well. And it kind of gives a little bit of a benefit because they bring people and they drink beer, and then we give a little bit of a benefit to them. But they can also present more of what they're talking about if it is an organization like that. I mean, we get anything from like a public school fundraiser to autism organizations and things like that are like always looking for some type of support for things that they do. And so if we invite them into your space, you can kind of create that type of community and kind of build up them and give them an audience that they might not actually reach. That's
awesome. Yeah, thank you. Any other, I know we only have like 2 minutes. Any other questions or?
Can we shout out Anne?
Yay, Anne! That is the reason we're here.
And Derek and Scarlett. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. This is our Outsmart email. You can follow us on Instagram. We are very active on Instagram. And I actually have some Outsmart cards as well that I'll put up here if anyone wants to come grab some and chat. Thank you so much for being here.